Good to see you. Welcome back to The Takeout. There's been some surprising and early poll numbers in the closely watched Senate primary down in Texas that have caught our eye. State Representative James Talarico has a 9-point edge in this poll over Congresswoman and presumed frontrunner, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Talarico notably polled very well with Latino voters across the state, which is a growing and important element of the Democratic primary electorate in that state. The first round of the primary, of course, is on March 3rd. Let's bring in our reporter panel. Oriana Gonzalez covers politics and policy for NOTUS, N-O-T-U-S, which stands for?
News of the United States.
Excellent. And Eleanor Mueller reports on Congress for Semafor,
Yep.
which is a word in the English language. And if you like your news in yellow, you should check out Semafor. You'd understand why. Good to see both of you. Okay, let's start with this Texas race. Oriana, do these numbers surprise? What do Democrats here in Washington who are watching this one closely make of this?
I want to say that they're not surprising, actually. NOTUS has been following this race particularly closely. And what my colleagues, actually, Daniela Diaz and Alex Rorty, found recently was that a lot of the donors that Jasmine Crockett has are people that have donated to Trump in the past. So think the Winklevoss brothers, Lockheed Martin's PAC, the Coinbase CEO. Again, people that have given money to Republicans and Trump in the past. And that has alarmed a ton of Democrats, consultants, strategists, and officials who say that that means that Crockett is not the progressive candidate that she says that she is. And so it gives Talarico an advantage in the race. And
part of the reason those Republicans might be donating to her is in hopes that she wins and makes it easier for Republicans to hold on to the seat, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. What do you think, if anything, it would take to have Democratic leadership get involved in this one? Because so far they've been like, we're going to let this one play out.
They've been very diplomatic, not just in this race, but in a lot of races across the country, even in the House, where Democrats are obviously building as strong and offensive as they can going into the midterm elections. It's been interesting to watch, especially today, what's happening on the other side of the aisle in this race. We saw Senate Majority Leader John Thune basically say that they've tried to get the president to endorse Senator John Cornyn,
who is the incumbent in this contest.
Who is the incumbent.
Right.
And he doesn't think that they'll be able to deliver. John Cornyn was asked about it. He said there's only one person who knows why Trump hasn't endorsed, and presumably he was referencing God. And so interesting GOP tension over, having a majority that maybe is not your perfect majority, but it's certainly better than a minority.
Right, because the concern is if Cornyn loses the primary in a three-way race to the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's not a very popular figure statewide because of all sorts of scandal, the Democrats could conceivably pick it off, but then Republicans think there's no way Jasmine Crockett could win a statewide race. Talarico, who's, a minister from the Austin area, presents differently, is a more traditional, maybe Texas statewide figure. We'll see. Starts March 3rd. There's a second round. We'll go from there. I wanted to talk to Eleanor about this reporting you had on the first $500 million oil deal that the U.S. has cut for Venezuelan oil, which signals that the process of moving that oil out and someone at least making money for it is underway. What do we know?
We know very little. I was saying right before we came on the air, there's a lot of unanswered questions here. Oil companies are trying to get answers. Members of Congress are trying to get answers. We don't really know who the oil was sold to. We don't know what happens to it at this stage. An administration official told my colleague Shelby Talcott that the revenue was being placed in a Qatari bank account. We don't know for sure why they elected to do that. I think I spoke to someone.
A bank in Qatar.
A bank in Qatar, and I spoke to someone today.
Not like the branch office of Bank of America.
No.
But a Qatari bank.
Yeah, the thinking is that maybe by doing so, they could remove it even further from some of Venezuela's creditors who might otherwise try to tap some of those funds to pay their debts. It sounds like that might not be an entirely foolproof way to do it, but either way, we've seen very little clear signaling from the White House on what exactly to expect when it comes to how this oil is sold and how the proceeds are then funneled back to the Venezuelan people.
But a chance for the White House to say, see, momentum is moving, the oil is moving, and we're helping make that happen. Oriana, one of the things I wanted to touch on in our remaining moments is this Supreme Court ruling that now lets candidates challenge election laws. You might think to yourself at home, why couldn't they already do that? Explain and explain how it could affect this year's contests.
So before this ruling, it was very difficult for candidates to establish what's known as standing in order to bring a lawsuit and challenge voting laws. You really had to prove that somehow you were harmed by these laws. And so a lot of them were dismissed. What happened yesterday was that the Supreme Court essentially said, if you are a candidate, that is enough. That's enough of a reasoning to say, I want to challenge a voting law, be it having to do with mail-in ballots, but have it to do with just anything at this point. And we know that Republicans have been really calling for election reform, particularly led by President Donald Trump, who has been saying that, the election of 2020 was stolen and such. And so what this means is that leading up to 2026, what we could see is a flood of lawsuits from candidates challenging voting laws ahead of the election, or how Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said in her dissent, if someone loses in an election by a landslide, they could just challenge the results if they wanted to and say, you know what? Okay, sure, I lost by 80% of the vote. I think the mail-in ballot law did not do good for me. So I'm going to challenge that one.
So
and
if
they have
anything, it
standing.
just prolongs the official tallying of a result and announcing it. And that is the expectation that critics of this ruling are anticipating, is that you're now going to see people, whether they're the, mainstream candidate or a fringe candidate, step in and just file lawsuits to try to muck up results.
Exactly. And I would say not just critics, but I was talking to Mike Bost. I was talking to Mike Kelly, for example. He was a Republican. He's from Pennsylvania. He challenged Pennsylvania's voting laws in 2020. His lawsuit was dismissed. And I asked him about this because I was like, what if this happened before? And he essentially said that this could inspire other candidates to do the same that he did.
We'll see what happens. To be continued. Oriana Gonzalez, Eleanor Mueller, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.